Hello, everybody. Welcome to Decision Time. I'm Ben here with my co-host Jacob Collin, and we are joined today by UFC debutant in a couple of weeks, Mandel Nallo. How's it going?
I'm doing well, buddy. Thank you.
And Jacob, you have the first question?
Yeah, you've been called like a kind of a long road fighter. Do you see that as an advantage now or something that kind of cost you a bit of time?
I don't even reflect on it, like that. I think in the world of MMA, especially Canadian MMA, you just sort of take what you can get. So I just consider myself a guy who's been working, and now now I'm in a place where I can do more work. So I don't even factor that in really.
Absolutely. I was wondering, I absolutely love your social media presence and the way you kind of promote yourself. Could you explain to the audience what, rat garbage is and what was the creative process behind that?
Yeah, so it's kind of like maybe it's anti-promotion. But when social media was becoming important, especially Instagram, I'm always late to the game. So my friends were telling me you gotta make an Instagram profile, it'll help you, you'll get sponsors or whatever. And I was like, oh, no. So I didn't want to do the standard MMA fighter Instagram, like how many times are you gonna see me hit pads, you know, picture with my shirt off. I'm sitting in a barber's chair, like how many times have you seen that? It can't be that entertaining. So I was like, oh, I'll do the opposite. So we cooked up a name that was the most off-putting name possible that was available on Instagram. And then, and then it just sort of stuck. Like it was not the intention for that to be the nickname or anything. And then I just started making little photo edits and stuff in my spare time because I didn't want to just play video games or anything between training sessions. And then I was like, oh, I should put these on a shirt. And I started just making that as like Christmas gifts for my family. And then it grew into this. I don't know. It's kind of happened very organically.
And you kind of said that it's like almost anti-promotion. And like, do you think fighters nowadays almost take themselves a little too seriously with like the posting of like training and like flexing their muscles and all that stuff? Do you think that's a little much?
To me, I don't want to see it. Like, I feel like there's probably two guys in the world where it's like, oh, that's pretty impressive. The rest of them, like, what does it matter,
Mhm.
So I think, I think also, I don't know, I don't know what kind of benefit you're getting from it as a fighter. Like, it just seems tedious to constantly be like, oh, let's take a photo, oh, let's film this, just go to the gym and do your work. Can you imagine you go to work every day and you got to film something for like, oh, I'm at my desk, oh, I'm delivering these packages, like just do the work. I don't know. So
Mhm.
to me it takes away from the job when you're constantly trying to make content, but I don't want to knock anybody's hustle. If it works, it works. Lord knows I don't get sponsors from what I do. So if it works for guys, then more power to them.
Yeah, you mentioned your gym. You mainly train with tr at TriStar with Perez as a hobby, who of course has
Yeah.
trained, like GSP, Rory, and a lot of current fighters like you train with Arnold Allen and of course his brother, Eamon.
Mhm.
How long have you been training there and how would you say that they've helped evolve your game overall?
I've been here a long time. I'm like second generation TriStar OG. Like obviously I'm not in the GSP, Dave Loiseau, Ivan Menjivar. Like we've had so many amazing Canadian fighters come through here and Americans. Tarek Saffiedine was here before. um, Mark Bocek. Like it's too many guys to name. But I'm the next wave. So when those guys were all competing in the UFC, I was training under them as an amateur, and then we do trend a little bit older at TriStar. But yeah, I've been here since I was 18 or something. Too long. But yeah, I think for me, the compatibility that I have with Faraz and with the rest of the team is it's a perfect fit. So I think Faraz has made me significantly better than I would have been at any other gym.
And you touched on for a sec about like Canadian MMA and like kind of I wanted to ask you about, do you think it's harder for Canadians to get recognized in the sport of MMA? Like, do you think it's a harder path compared to, fighters from like Brazil or Russia or America? Do you think it's a much harder to even get noticed from the bigger persons?
Yeah, I mean, just the fact that we've had such shaky infrastructure when it comes to our regional promotions, like there now we have a group of regional promotions that put on shows pretty consistently and you have a platform, but before you didn't know when the next show was going to be. Like you would fight once for, whatever regional show and then they'd fall apart and then you'd have to find the next show or go to New York or figure something else out. So we didn't have the infrastructure to really build a career here. That's why me and Eamon and a lot of the guys that moved up to the bigger promotions, our records were fairly small. We were like 5-0, 6-0 because we just couldn't get fights regionally. Um, so there's that, and then there's like zero support from anyone outside of
Mhm.
your gym. Like there are so many good fighters from other countries that where like you show up fight week and they've got like six guys. They all have nice clothes and they drive drive a nice car. They're well situated. Canadian fighters, you always know who the Canadian is because just them and their one teammate that got the free flight out. And there's just like two dudes in an elevator, like we get zero backing. So it is fairly difficult, but luckily things are on the up and up. I think there are a lot of good Canadians that are starting to perform well in the UFC. I mean, just the fact that Mike Mallett's headlining this show is pretty cool. And Eamon's
Yeah,
fighting in the White House, which is
yeah.
Crazy.
amazing.
That's
Yeah,
awesome.
it's gonna be nuts.
You mentioned you were talking about, your teammates and how some of them are from other countries. We here on the show, we love Arnold Allen. And when I was doing some research, I saw that you and Arnold used to be roommates. Could you tell
That's
us
right.
about your like experience with being like living with a top-ranked UFC fighter?
I mean, we Arnold we're very similar in that like we're reserved and we don't like to step on anybody's toes. So it's just like two, mice trying to avoid the other guy. So it's a lot of like headphones in, avoid eye contact. And then we're in the gym and we're talking about when we're down. This is where Arnold lived in this apartment here, and it was a lot of just two. I'm half British, he's full British, and we're all just very polite and we're not trying to be in anybody else's space. But
I
yes,
wanted
we miss having Arnold.
I want to talk about when your Dana White Contender Series fight finished. Dana White told you, "I love your age, but I love your fight style." How did that actually sit with you when you heard that?
Honestly, to me, I know a lot of people took it the wrong way. I got it. Like I know what they're looking for. They're not looking for a 36-year-old. Um, but I've always been of the opinion that like my skills are very high. If I can perform in the cage, then it doesn't really matter. And the reality is, how long is a UFC career really? Like obviously there are exceptional careers that last, from age, early 20s to late 30s, but realistically most guys have like a 5 to 7 year window in the UFC, and that's when their best work is done. There are some world champions that have, been out in less than that time. So like as long as I can give them a great body of work and that like in my current state, then it like it never factored in. I don't feel old. There's no, lingering injuries that I have to worry about. I think a lot of people don't understand that like 36 with a ton of mileage is different than 36 with very, very little mileage. Here at TriStar, we take care of ourselves. We want longevity in a career, and we understand that MMA is like hyper technical. So skill acquisition is paramount for us. We want to be able to teach martial arts well into our old age. So we're not too concerned about getting there early. We just want to finish strong, you know? There are a lot of guys who maybe they'll excel in their 20s and it's like, oh, he's in the prime, he's in his prime, he's 27. But like, how good are the guy's skills? There are a lot of guys amazing, and then they get put on the ground, and it's like, oh, wait a minute, you're 27, you're not a black belt, you know? So like, we care about technique more than anything. So I didn't, it doesn't even come across my mind. And in my mind, I'm 21 anyways.
So do you think that age is like more like an actual factor? Do you think it's more of like a construct amongst fans to like gauge like, oh, is this guy good? Oh no, he's old and whatever.
Yeah, I think a better metric to understand is mileage. Like if a
Mhm.
guy has had a very hard career, let's say a guy started, he turned pro at 18 and he's had banger fights, he's been put down, he's been in some, you know, dragged out fights. That guy's gonna maybe fight older than he is at 28. You know, that's 10 years pro MMA. But if a guy's had a like look at Wonder Boy. I know Wonder Boy is starting to slow down, but like nobody strikes better than Wonder Boy. When he fought Shavkat, he hit Shavkat and immediately the guy started wrestling. Like nobody forces that guy to wrestle as hard as Wonder Boy did. I think like and he's had some tough fights, but I just think like mileage matters so much more than age. I think when a fighter is known as a tough guy with a good chin, the chances of them having a tough late career are higher than a guy who's been able to avoid damage and you know, stay healthy. Also, your habits outside of the gym. Like there are a lot of guys who party post fight. You know, there's a lot of guys who spend, you know, 1 to 2 months really enjoying not being in camp. And I think that living clean generally keeps you quote unquote young.
In previous interviews, you've talked about like overthinking and like just having like a lot of thoughts going on in big moments. What does that actually feel like in a fight, and how do you deal with that, especially in a short amount of time?
Yeah, I think that's a big thing that plays into a lot of fighters' heads because it like you have 15 minutes, you put in, you know, 2 months or 6 weeks to 2 months worth of work, and then it all boils down to 15 minutes or 30 seconds, you know, in a weird exchange. So it's something you have to get over. The thing that helps me is just knowing that I did like a ridiculous amount of work. Like every piece of the work has been done before entering the cage. And then honestly, George gave me some advice that just like you really do need to pare back the way you think when you're fighting. You can't just be a normal guy that thinks analytically. You have to kind of become a caveman and like just hone in on the things that you are meant to do in that fight. You can't be thinking about every outcome. You just think about the things that you need to do and execute those things, and then you can go back to being a normal guy after the fight is done. But yeah, like really paring back the way that you think generally is the only way for me.
You mentioned mileage in a career. You're going to be fighting on April 18th, Jai Herbert, who in his last five fights has gone to decision and wars in all of the last five fights. Do you think that, do you think that you kind of have a bit of a benefit because just been going through wars and you've never been to a decision in your professional career?
Yeah, I mean it plays both ways, right? He's got the experience advantage for sure. He knows how to fight to a decision and win some of those decisions, you know. And I think Jai is like way better than his record shows in the UFC. Obviously he dropped the current champion and like was, you know, inches away from a finish there. So
Mhm.
he does have that as a plus in his, you know, in his favor, but I do think like that many camps, that many rounds, that much damage, it does wear on you. You know, your body, you're not immortal. Like there are things that, you know, you're not impervious to damage. So there's got to be little chips that have been taken out over the course of his career. Um, so yeah, that's definitely something in my favor for sure.
And with fighting Jai Herbert, what's something he does well that you've had to specifically prepare for? Is there something that you've noticed on film and tape that you're like, okay, we have to be ready for this. I have to know this is coming.
I think Jai is very sharp. He's like there are a lot of guys that get into the UFC, and if you w were to take their kickboxing and place it outside of an MMA fighter's skill, you'd be like, oh, he's actually not a good kickboxer. Like maybe he's effective, but he's not like his technique isn't very clean. Jai's got super crisp kickboxing technique. You can see it in the exchanges. And I think that that's something that is different than fighting a lot of MMA guys that are maybe potentially a little more wild, a little more loose with their strikes.
He's very technical, and he's had a lot of fights against a lot of pretty solid names. Like, of course, he said Ilya, he's fought Hanato Moicano and a fellow Canadian, Kyle Nelson. What kind of new challenge do you think you kind of pose to Jai Herbert?
I think I'm a lot more creative than the guys he's fought in the past, and I think that he hasn't fought a lot of guys that are as much like him as I am. We're very similar in a lot of ways. So I think that it'll be interesting to see whose tools work better because we have a lot of the same tools.
You had also said in a previous interview that part of your nickname, like rat garbage, you said a rat will do anything to survive. Is
Yeah.
that how you see yourself in the cage sometimes?
Yeah, I think you have to. And I think that that's a thing that I look for in fighters that I like that maybe aren't fan favorite fighters or something that like will grow on me if I wasn't sure about a fighter and then I see them do something and I'm like, wow, that like this guy really, really needed to win. He wanted to win and he found any way. Like a good example, I think, like I was never a huge Israel Adesanya fan. Like I think he's a great fighter, but like he never really excited me until the second Pereira fight when like he had exhausted every option and he knew the only way to get that win was to score that knockout and he just was like instead of shelling up a lot of fighters would have just shelled up or they would have shot a takedown or they would have they would have done something run away. He was like I'm gonna score this big right hand and this is what it needs to be and that was like really special to me. Or this is like not as glamorous, but Ian Gary when he was almost finished against Prates,
Cortez.
he was crawling on his hands and knees away from like that. That is the most anti-fighter thing to do. Most guys would have pulled guard or they would have like tried to roll into the legs. But he like in his mind he knew like I just got to keep like crawling away like he's being murdered.
Yep.
Nobody would do that except for a guy who really, really, really needs the win. He doesn't care about optics, and I think that that's a cool trait for fighters to have.
Absolutely, I agree. I was just wondering, so nearly half of your professional fights were in Bellator. Does this feel like, your debut in the UFC, does it feel like a kind of new challenge to you, or is it just another fight in your eyes?
I think largely it's another fight. I will say that the UFC is obviously the pinnacle. Like nobody starts out their career and doesn't want to fight in the UFC. I've always been okay with fighting in a cage for money. That's the job. Everybody's tough. It doesn't matter whether they're in the UFC or not, but obviously it does come with a added level of prestige. The amount of people when fighting in Bellator, it was at that point it was number two, you know, not maybe not a close second, but a clear second. And the amount of people that would be like, why don't you just fight in the UFC? Did you ever think about fighting in the UFC? What do you want from me? It's not up to me. So it is nice now. It's like it legitimizes the career in a certain aspect.
Uh, in Toronto, and you traveled to Montreal to train in TriStar, but you've talked about opening like TriStar Toronto. I wanted to ask, how is that going? Is that something you're focused on right now, or more a little bit later in the future?
Yeah, so TriStar Toronto is operational. We run classes 7 p.m. every day, jiu-jitsu, noon on Saturdays. Right now I'm not teaching because I'm in Montreal every week. I teach Saturdays still, but it is an ongoing project where we're going to build out the schedule. But the space is there. Classes are being taught. They're being taught by Steve and Barry Sims. Steve's an amazing black belt. Barry's an amazing black belt. And yeah, it's fun to have another project going. Like I don't know how old you guys are, but like there's no worse feeling for a person than completing something that you've been excited to complete because then you're just like floating around, you know? So trying to stay busy with a group of projects that you can kind of like focus, put all your attention into and care about is the key to life for me. So it's nice to have to know like when this fight is done and I've given it my all, I can now give the gym my all as well.
Hmm. So you like to stay busy.
You have to.
Yeah. What would you say your schedules look like? What is your schedule for this upcoming event? Like it's in Winnipeg, you're gonna have to travel. So what's your schedule looking like?
You mean fight week or just leading up to it?
Just leading up to it.
Yeah, so when I'm in camp, I travel from Toronto to Montreal every Sunday night. I train Monday through Friday sparring. Then I travel back to Toronto. I do a workout at night, and then I hang out with my family and my kids. I teach class on Saturday, uh, and then I do it again for, as long as the camp is. So it's been 5 weeks of it, 6 weeks, 5 weeks of it now. So I got this week and one more week here, and then I'm gonna go to Winnipeg. And fight week is always the best. Fight week's the best feeling. You just like get to focus on doing something very, very crazy.
So you seem like you're constantly traveling and training and stuff like that. You've mentioned as well that the world is rough outside the UFC. Like what's something fans like don't really understand about the grind of it?
So like before I was signed, the the randomness of your career is so difficult to plan for. Like even in the UFC, you don't know when you're going to get matched up. I'm sure you've seen UFC fighters be like, "Oh yeah, like I was going to go on vacation, but then they offered me this matchup and I couldn't say no." Like your family is kind of at the whims of whatever matchups you get. And that's even in the UFC. Outside of the UFC, I've been on vacation with my family, and then my manager calls like, "Hey, do you want to fight in Mexico in 3 weeks?" It's like, I guess so, because it's work and I have to do it. And it's way easier for guys to drop off of cards regionally, local show. Like, does the guy really want to fight a guy with only KOs or only subs? Everybody knows that too many losses in your career or a loss at the wrong time in your career just tanks your chances of getting on Contender or into the UFC. So like everybody's really looking out for their record. So your chances of actually fighting are very low. And then like getting a matchup is hard. Having a fight go through all the way to completion with no injuries and your opponent not banging out is hard. And then you do it all and you get paid very little money. And then you're like, what now? Like, do I get signed to the Contender? Do I get a shot at the UFC, or do I just do it all again?
Mhm.
So like, support your regional fighters, man. Like the guys that are actually trying to make it work, those guys are doing it for the love of the game. The paychecks are not big, and the dream is all they have. So show them some love, but don't let them be too self-important. It's an indulgent job at the end of the day.
Mhm.
Hmm. You said that it's a lot of a grind and it's, sometimes not too forgiving. You've been training martial arts for nearly 2 decades now. Would you say your perspective like has changed a bit around fighting? As you're more of a pro now and you're a family man, has your perspective changed at all about fighting?
Yes. I used to think like things have to be perfect, like because everybody they grow up, they watch Floyd Mayweather, they watch George, they watch like these are the guys that are put on a pit on a pedestal, and rightfully so. These guys are very special fighters. Um, but too much is made of the perfect career. I'm sure even Floyd had his hardships that he had to overcome. Even though his record was perfect, like there are things that don't go perfectly. And trying to trying to make everything perfect will just diminish uh the joy you have in a career. Like things are going to be fine as long as you're focused on technique and you love the training, and you take care of the people around you that are supporting you, things will work out. Just keep pushing on. So yeah, like that's initially I was like, oh yeah, I got to be like Floyd. I got to get no knockdowns, no losses. The career is easy. You know, that's just not the way it works.
And there were years where your career, wasn't moving fast. There was a lot of positive breaks. I wanted to ask, like, what kept you going when there was no guarantee? Like, was there someone that can like consistently pushed you to keep going? Was it just kind of like a mental thing where you're like, I have to do this, or was it just something else?
I think it's just first of all understanding that this is all I really want to do. So it, I was never worried about I was never tired of the training or like the lifestyle even. I'm not a big money guy, like as silly as that sounds. Like I don't care as long as I get to do this. What else am I going to do? I'd be paying money to train anyway. So um just just knowing that like it's it doesn't always work out the way you intended, you know? Like you can plan a perfect career and speed bumps will come along the way. I know guys who they wanted to be pro fighter. It didn't work out for whatever reason. They got injured, whatever. Now they're an amazing coach. They have a sick gym and they make money that way. Like as long as you're committed to the art, whatever it is, things will work out if you commit to it with your all. So like I was never worried when things were stagnating because I was like, God, some good will happen if I just keep doing the work.
That's a great mindset to have. I was so I, you've taken inspiration when you were younger from Jackie Chan. Shout out Rumble in the Bronx, great movie. Who would you say, as of right now, is your biggest inspiration and with moving forwards,
Like in like a fighter or just a general, just
just in life?
somebody.
And yeah,
You know, I like people who uh, are so passionate about what they do that it's infectious. Like, you know, the singer of the Talking Heads, David Byrne. Like, he's a guy. He just keeps putting out music. It's always good, and he's in his I don't know 60s. Like, and he's collaborating with people who are much younger. People like that who like the dream is never done. If you love making things or you love working, then it doesn't matter. So there are so many people that I'm inspired by that aren't fighters that just like they just keep not reinventing themselves even, but just uh keep evolving in the thing that they're known for.
So yeah, you're making your UFC debut April 18th. I was wondering, like, what does success actually look like for you beyond just winning?
I mean, to me, you have to make a statement in your UFC debut. If you don't, you end up kind of in the mix. And that's the roughest place to be because the churn of like good fighters that nobody really cares about or watches, those guys are all so good. And like the people who excel in MMA in the UFC, they're guys who manage to jump through that, you know, block of amazing fighters that nobody really watches. So you got to like whether it's Sean O'Malley, Ilya Topuria, even like a guy like Peyton Talbot, they're all guys that managed to kind of jump the line because of their initial performances. And that doesn't mean you need every performance to be exceptional, but like you need to have the fan perception and the business and the UFC's perception of you to be like, oh yeah, this guy we can bump him up. Rather than just be like, oh yeah, this guy can fill out a card, you know, in X location. You don't want to do that. So that would be a really successful outing would be to do something so special that you jump the line a little bit.
and would you say that's why you always are pushing for finishes, like never going to decision, you're just always going for the finish?
No, I don't know. That's just what happens. I my game
You're
plan
just
is
like that.
like I'm always preparing for 15 minutes and then yeah, I'm like it just crazy stuff happens in there.
Um, I want to ask you a little bit about your future. So, like 5 years from now, let's just say, where do you see yourself? Like, do you still see yourself still fighting? potentially in the UFC? Do you see yourself like transitioning to be like a full-time coach? Like, what does your life look like in 5 years, basically?
Impossible to say. I would like to have an amazing UFC career. You know, this is ideally where I end my MMA competitive career. But like outside of that, I do so much other stuff. And I like doing so much other stuff. Obviously, I will always have the gym and coach MMA, but I don't know if I want to do what Faraz does. That's the hardest thing in the world. The amount of guys he has to watch. Hey, coach, can you watch this guy? He's he's a amateur fighter. You can watch his last fight on YouTube. It's grainy footage that his girlfriend filmed. Do you mind watching him and seeing if there's like, ah, man. Then he's got to travel to all these places. Being a full-time coach is and not that fun.
Hmm.
MMA coach at least. So I don't know. I want to do more stuff with clothing. I want to do more stuff with artwork and do more stuff in martial arts. But I don't know what in 5 years. That's
Too
who
far.
knows. Too far.
Absolutely. I just have one final question. I was wondering, are there any teammates of yours that you'd like to give a shout out to that you think the UFC should be looking out for?
I mean, top of mind is Louis Sanudakis. He's like me, Eamon, and Louis are three guys who pretty much grew up in the gym. Um, we all are Faraz Zahabi black belts. We've all had, long careers. Eamon obviously is done amazingly well in his past 7 fights. And I think Louis is another guy who, given the right opportunities, would do some pretty special stuff. So Louis, for sure.
And my final question would just be, is there anything you want fans or anybody like that watches that you just want to know you want them to know about yourself?
Mm, I'm no, like you get it,
Who
I guess,
cares?
from listening to me, you get it.
Yeah,
I'm just a guy.
yeah.
Yeah.
All right, well, thank you for joining us today. This was just a pleasure and an honor. Everybody, watch out for Mandel Nallo. He's facing Jai Herbert at UFC Manitoba, April 18th.
Hmm.
And yeah, thank you for joining us and have a great one.
You too, boys.
Thank you so
Peace.
much, man. We really
Of
appreciate
course.
it.
Of course. Keep hustling.
Yep.
Thank you,
Yep.
sir.
Peace.
We'll be
Peace.
watching. Peace.
I appreciate it. Thank you.